This wide sweeping bar, I have to put it as a structured situation, but we have at the same time we got to examine this thing before I could call it a structured situation. This is primarily associated with natural lakes. And this is your predominant structure situation in most natural lakes, such as the north, where a lot of you fellows fish. Now, this distinction between this is whether it's got a break line. If you look at that thing, and it's usually associated with some kind of point or something, but you come up as you're fishing and you'll come up on a big wide bar, a sandbar or something of this nature, you better take a look at it, because in natural lakes and even some other lakes it does. So I put the contour lines out here. And many times this will get out on the end of the bar and she'll break. Now it's up to you to interpret this thing, and a lot of you I know has done this. So the interpretation of this bar isn't very difficult to do. You would think where the contact point, where am I going to concentrate my effort on this big bar? It's still a structured situation. In the last newsletter or some back, I made this question for you fellows to think about. I said this: what would you call a sharper break? And that's where something that shows the sharper break, where she broke in, you saw the figure. A sharper break that breaks into the deepest water. A sharper break that breaks the deepest into the deepest water. Very simple. That's the contact point. I don't care how big this bar is. It's the area where a sharper break, you'll have breaks around that thing, where the sharper breaks off faster, where the sharper break breaks the deepest. In other words, instead of breaking at 12 feet, or 8 feet or whatever it is, this one breaks down here at 16, 18 feet. Let me see if I can focus that a little bit better. Okay, now you see this is breaking the deepest, 18 feet. This one breaks at 16 feet. Sometimes this is only 6. This one up here is 12. This one breaks at 18. Now watch it. It broke the deepest into the deepest water. 35. 29, 24, 25. That's your contact point. So these big, wide bars and things that you, in your natural lakes and a lot of other type lakes, that is the way you say, how am I going to find this? Well, the best way I know is to troll it. And be sure that you're following the break line, and you'll see which one, if you got a depth sounder, or if you know what the spoon plug is telling you, then you'll find out where it's breaking deep. If the fish are there, then there's no question about you'll find the contact point. But most of the time, when you hit a structure the first time, you're lucky if the fish are on it. But you may come back 2 or 3 times, so fish do not move constantly or consistently. But this is something that you have to probably come back and check. But when you were working this, you should have recognized the bar, the place on this bar that broke the deepest, the sharpest, into the deepest water. Broke the deepest into the deepest water. Those big bars, you have to consider them as structure situations. Here's another structure situation. I look at all islands. And a little later on, you see, I don't look at all islands for what we're going to see right here. I look at them for something else, a structure situation. In this case, this is an island that it has a channel on both sides. It has a bar at the lower end. Let's say the water's flowing this way. You have a bar here, and you have a bar here. Here is a look. I want you to see this right here. because pretty soon I'm going to stick some trees and bushes on all these structure situations. And we're going to see what's going to happen. The upper side, if you see these bushes and things on this before the dam went over it or anything, this you see has been washed clear. This bar here, you don't see the brush on it. You'll see a little brush down here at the lower end if the stream is running this way. So even though you have it, if I cover up that thing with that island and I put the lake is completely covered with brush, that upper side of that thing is going to be clean. In other words, you can get out the heck out of the brush. You can get the heck out of the timber. Here's the, when the water's up here, that's what the trees are showing. This is what, whether that's upstream or downstream, probably is downstream. And so you're going to have the brush all out through there probably if it's all covered with brush. But the upper side of that thing, up here on the upstream side, it'll probably be washed clean. You see how it's washed clean? And you can get on you can get away from the timber. This, when you see this, you better check it out, because it is one of those things that I list as a structure situation. I don't know whether you're keeping count, but we'll go through them in all in just a few minutes. This is another one that a lot of people don't pay attention to. They ask me this: why did you put a saddle as a structure situation? You think about that sometime. Now, the reason I did it was the fact that sometimes the depth of water in that saddle in there is in the sanctuary depths in the center, so he could go either way. They could migrate either way on that structure situation. Another thing is, a lot of times you may not have the sanctuary depths there, but the brakes and brake lines around that thing, and the other side of it, behind that island, may have brake lines that eventually some fish can migrate to the lower part of that saddle. That's the reason I put it in there. It looked like to me that there wouldn't be much depth there, because that is a weed situation that you'll find up north. This is, it looked like that's pretty shallow, but that's a reflection. And when I shot that picture, the water at low water, it looked like that I would say that that is a saddle that wouldn't produce unless something led it up there. But when I actually looked at that, I found that this was actually a shadow of this thing over here. So this could, but in just looking at it, how steep it seemed like it's kind of flattened out like here. Most likely, that would not produce, and you can recognize it, not in the sanctuary depths, so you just could forget that one. But many times, this is what you run into. If you look at that, you see this one could possibly be, because look at the depth up here. Now you're going to see what the slides will do. Now that's that island. And when I see those islands, you know what I think about? Is there a saddle in here that will pinpoint the fish for me? There's a hump. Many times I'm going to take up the hump because it's important. That's another structure situation. But look at that hump. Look at that. Look at this depth. That hump could be in the sanctuary depths. This right in here. I know they wouldn't go this way because that'd be dead end unless it looked like it might come up to 8 or 10 feet. But they go each way. But that saddle would be in there at high water. And when I see this, or I see the top of that island, man, I'm going to get right down in here. Because if this barely sticking out, that will lead to the shallows. This will lead to the shallows. This is most likely, if the lake was full, the water was way up here, the migration is going to be this way. That would be a dead end. Now I hope that this interpretation isn't going too fast here, but these are some of the things that you're going to see in instructor situations that exist that you'll run into if you fish as long as I have in as many areas. This is humps. That valley, that saddle is most of the time is cut by the stream that probably flowed through there. This was probably produced by a slide. And as the water went through here, you can see the slide is still here. It came from up here. There's been some water there trickling through at times, but that was later. This thing occurred, and this was eroded by water, flood water, and so on. But you see the situation that exists in a saddle, and this is an island. This is a highland lake near my home. I can see this thing as I come up here. This is a short off a rock, and this is a gorge. This is packed inside of my house. This is a gorge that they've never even taken the timber out of it. They can't get it out of there. But this is a lake right here that I've told stories, fishing with Dad, and I said, you're fishing in the wrong place at the wrong time when I was about 13 years old. And that's the lake he threatened to throw me in if I didn't shut up. But that those two islands, one is a point, and here's an island. That cove back in behind there, at this point, it goes back fairly far and comes out, goes around and goes on up here, and the river goes on up here, and the lake comes up here and comes to the base of that short off right there. That produced a lot of fish for me. It was a little saddle right here that I've gotten a few fish right in the middle. I've gotten them off of this point here. I even got them off of this, but what happened was that after I examined it, this bar here was an underwater bar, and that channel came down on this side. It came down here and swung here, and that extended to the Doe. Now the reason I remember that particular area on this lake, as I fished it as a little bitty fellow with my daddy, was, believe it or not, that cove was called Backhouse Cove, because there are no rotten John up sitting back in there. So in other words, it should have been called a John Cove or something, but we call it a Backhouse Cove. We had another one right around the corner that we called Jack Stable, because it was an old Jack Stable, a log cabin back in there, and I remember all those names. But in this case, both points that are produced and the saddle did too, for me in past tense. Humps is another structured situation. There's all kinds of humps. You'll have humps in the sanctuary depths. You'll have humps and halfway to the shore in the shallows, and then you'll have humps in the shallows. You have to distinguish the ones that will produce. This confuses a lot of people. Let's take a bass and put him in the sanctuary depths with a hump. Let's say that the sanctuary depth is right here. This fish, a bass, don't expect him to go up to that hump because it doesn't extend to shallow water. Another reason that he wouldn't do it is because he won't go down the backside to come over here. So it becomes a dead end. The bass, most of the time when I run into this, and I don't fish the top of that hump. I found that out a long time ago that I had to forget that top of the hump. But the base of that hump is a different story. So I found that this was a break in the sanctuary depths, and the fish were related to that break right here before they migrated. Then they had to find a path that went all the way. Now, if this could be what I call a dead end. If that hump did not go and was related to a structure situation, such as a bar, and it did not go to the shallow, but say cut off at 14 feet, I don't ever expect to find any. I might find a smallmouth or something like that that might wander up on that rascal, or maybe even a northern come up on there. But when I'm looking for a largemouth, I don't spend much time there. I just maybe make a pass at it to see if anything's on it, because it does go to the shallows. If I had a brake line around that thing and come up here and come on up, and this one goes to the shallows, then that is going to give you a concentration of fish, because you heard me say before, they will not go down the backside of the hump. But this would be the one. These are the humps. Sanctuary depths, humps, you check them out. But some species you might find here once in a while. But I do my fishing according to the big largemouth bass. I find that these guidelines will give me best control for the largemouth bass, because he reacts to weather and water conditions so drastically that if I learn how to catch him consistent in how he moves, then it's just too bad if the others get in the way. So I'm not belittling the other things, but when I go and catch the stripers out of San Francisco Bay, for instance, and they ask me, how did you catch them? How did you catch them where you weren't supposed to? I said, I don't know, first time I've been here. I just went bass fishing. And so that's the reason I use the bass because he's the one that's very, very difficult. He reacts to weather and water conditions in such a way that the average guy has a little problem catching a bass, especially a good-sized bass. But humps, you find them downstairs, and most of the time they'll be breaks related to the fish. If they go upstairs, if the humps do not go to the shallows, such as 8 to 10 feet, it's going to be a dead end. If it comes to within the 8 to 10 foot depth, that goes all the way to the shallows, but the fish gave you a concentration of fish because it won't go down the backside of that, get any farther. These are our guidelines. Most humps are marked in some way. They may have a buoy on them. Some of them you don't see. But as you're controlling your depth with lures, the lures will find them most of the time. I always cut out across the lake at times when I see the terrain and I see a saddle, I see an island. This particular lake has quite a few little visible islands. That tells me there's some humps in there somewhere, and I start looking for them. And you'll be amazed how often I find one that's exactly right. That is a good one. That's a good one. Part of a saddle has a hump on the end. Let me go back and look at that. When I see that tree out there in the water with the high water, I am going to look for some stuff downstairs, always. That's the reason I said a visible island such as so is a structure situation. You've got to look it over. Now, as I place these on, you fill the water over that thing and start thinking about, would you fish it? That looks good to me. It could be extremely high, that even that hump could be sanctuary depth, and it wouldn't be back in the sanctuary depth over here if at a low water stage. But at a high water stage, it's possible that the sanctuary depth would be right here. And when you work in a lake such as this, as a highland lake, these are some of the things you have to look for. In this case, there's a saddle there, but this is caused by a wash. You had a slide, and then probably you had a wash, but you had a slide, and it produced this hump pile of rock right there.